If anyone has any questions, let me know. This is your one time every year you get to grill these guys on things like why doesn't Selenium support HTTP status codes, and what's going on with the W3C standard, and all the questions that they love so much to answer. So stick your hand in the air and we will find you. Dave Hefner, okay.
I would love to hear why Selenium doesn't support HTTP status codes.
Simon is busy having a heart attack.
We don't have any microphones up here, so no. I can, oh, can I? I have it now. Why didn't we have HTTP status codes? We just like to torment people in new and interesting ways. I mean, it's an exercise in cruelty. TLDR, it's because it makes Jim go crazy. The other reason is it's a really ambiguous question. Like, which status code would you like back? Would you like the status code of the page that's mentioned in the URL? But like with single page apps, which are JavaScript driven, you probably want like the JavaScript that came in as well, right? So did you want everything that came into the page? But like if an image didn't load, maybe that's going to be all right. Or maybe there's some dead links or whatever. So like, what would you like us to do? Would you like we'll just add up all the status codes of everything that went in there and return the mean? Would that be good? Or the mode? Yeah, it's just such an ambiguous question. And people go like, well, Selenium RC used to be able to do that. And first of all, only sometimes it would do that if it was being used in proxy mode. And even then, it's like, no one really knows what it is. Jim.
Oh, and by the way, he mentioned a proxy mode. Hey, guess what WebDriver supports? It supports using a freaking proxy, which you can use yourself. And in fact, I happen to know of at least 2 blog posts, one blog post and one blog post series, that actually have demonstration code of exactly how to do it. One's in Ruby that Mr. Hafner himself wrote, and one that I wrote that deals with that shows you how to do it in C#. That you can actually go and get the traffic from the web server before it gets to your browser even, and do all kinds of manipulation before it comes back to the browser. But the Selenium project is not a proxy, and it's not something that's in our wheelhouse, not something we want to be an expert in. And why would we do a half-baked solution that other great projects like the Browser Mod Proxy or Fiddler do really, really well? So,
Next question.
Next question. Can we make it a hard one?
One we haven't answered 4,000 times.
Otherwise, we're going to all be forced to do
I
our
think
worst Sean Connery impressions.
I think that question has been asked every year.
Every year. Leo, really?
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Second.
Other questions.
We have questions besides organizers.
Surely people have had things that they wanted to ask for so many. You know, why did you do it this way, or what are you planning on doing? I mean,
this open source software pays all of our
all of us.
Jim, over there to the left.
Oh, over here.
Ed.
It's actually a reverse question. So everybody who uses Selenium for their job, could you raise your hand? All right. Now keep your hand raised.
Yep,
everybody who knows about their corporate open source policy of how they can contribute back to open source, please lower your hand. Everybody else, leave your hand up. I could ask all of you to please check into that and find out what your company open source policy is, because everybody in this room, could you raise your hand? Everybody who's raising their hand could be a contributor, including myself. Actually, I should say this myself. I'm not standing up there, so I should say that myself. So,
patches are always welcome.
Yes. Yeah, as long as you sign and seal it.
So we had a workshop 2 days ago, the day right before the conference, where Jim walked everyone through the repo, the code there, the build tools that we use. And out of the workshop, 6 to 8 hours later, we had at least 4 or 5 pull requests and people who have actually merged code into the Selenium code base. So that's a win.
Fix a bug, become a committer.
We'll be doing this every Selenium conference. Keep your eyes open and just show up.
Mike, you need a mic.
Why can't you add headers? Just kidding. As the main committer crew, what features would you guys like to see in Selenium?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think the one feature that I would like to see that the API does not expose, and there are good and sufficient reasons why it doesn't do it. But I really wish that there was a way that I could get at something to identify the browser in the browser in the operating system, whether that's the process ID or the window ID, some way to get that, because one of the things that people always ask about is I'd really like to be able to handle system level dialogues that come up, like, you know, I want to be able to dismiss the print dialog, or I want to be able to handle file downloads, although there are other ways, workarounds to do that. But what exposing that particular piece would do is it would allow not to handle that necessarily from within Selenium, but it would really allow companion projects to be able to give them a hook into that would be able to handle the OS level dialogues and the OS level elements, which would be, you know, something useful, I think. You know, it wouldn't be something that necessarily we would want to take on, but maybe some other enterprising person would be able to handle an OS level dialogue that you know, just by giving the hook that how you can locate it on the screen.
Sure. So I'm doing the Ruby bindings. I just joined the team earlier this year, and and I have the advantage of also being the lead developer of Water, which is web application testing in Ruby. Anyone wants to work on that project, come talk to me, because we could definitely use more eyes and feedback. But one of the great things about being in charge of that project too is that the stuff that Selenium isn't designed to do as a browser automation tool that's testing related, we're adding features and we're trying to make Water something that easy to write and maintain your tests. And so all of the things that don't belong in Selenium, we get to add to that. And so I guess as far as the specific question, there's nothing I need added to Selenium itself. I get to play with what Selenium gives me to make it easier for everyone to write tests.
I don't think there's much stuff that I'd add. One of the key visions that I had, like when I started working on WebDriver and Selenium, was that it was going to be the sort of tool that sat at the bottom of a stack of other stuff, right? And that stack of other stuff was going to be user-facing and wonderful. So like the Water idea is fantastic. The original suggestion I had was to use Fit, and that was a terrible idea. I apologize for that. If I was going to add anything, it would be to help hook you into a more integrated testing environment that you have. Like, it used to be that there was just browsers, but now it's like, how do you pull things from the desktop into the browser? How do you integrate with the operating system? Like tying into some of what Jim said. The mobile stuff is kind of interesting as well. Like, you know, pushing things to and from the browser to the phone and back again and things like that. There are two things that I want to remove from the project. If I could make it smaller, that would be great. The first one is all of the driver implementations. Like, we were mad to try and do browser implementations for every single browser out there. And I am constantly amazed about the fact that it works. The people who know best how to automate a browser are the people that write the browser. Like, they should be responsible for doing that. And actually, that's what we're seeing in the industry. Right? The W3C WebDriver specification was suggested by Opera Software a long time ago, and it was such an obviously great idea that it was like, yep, we're going to stop writing code and we're going to start writing English. And it turns out we're barely literate, so it's taken quite a long time for that to happen. The other thing as well is particularly in the Java bindings, there's a sort of wealth of support classes, and some of them were written without a huge amount of experience and like, hey, look, here's an example of how to do things, or like, I wouldn't do this normally, but you're having trouble doing that. And those have lived far too long, and they're not right, and they're not good. Like the Page Factory, like using annotations to pick up fields, so it's like, hey, look, this is really easy, I'll show you how you're meant to do it. And now, like, it's still mentioned in talks today, and it's like, oh, crikey. Like, I never expected people to actually use it. And it never integrated. Like, there's a select class. It would be nice if that was hooked in properly, right? And I never did it because it was like, well, this is just sample stuff, right? And in the ideal world, we'd evaporate those support classes and actually put in something that was far better and more fit for purpose based on 8 years worth of experience of doing automated testing using the WebDriver APIs. That's the end of me.
So, regarding features, something that I think would be extremely useful is full support of the logging API. That's a recent addition. I'm far? Oh, sorry. So, as a feature, I think full support of the logging API, which is a pretty recent addition to Selenium and the Wire protocol, so that you can download different levels of logging from the browser, things like network traffic or JavaScript errors or browser logs. And I think that's going to become even more useful when you switch to mobile and you have real devices there and you can pull logging out of there. Another little thing that I've been meaning to do for years now, and I think the project really needs, is a really solid test suite for the clients, where instead of using a remote WebDriver on the other end, we actually mock the HTTP layer, and every single test is basically a check of the endpoint JSON wire protocol to the client binding API, so that you can get tests running and complete in, I don't know, milliseconds instead of what we have today. So if you want to contribute, that's a good place to get started.
Just like Simon, I'd recommend some to contribute to the Selenium project would be we really need it would be helpful to have a redesign of the grid, and because a lot of people have noticed some performance issues with that and stuff. Really sensitive with the timeouts and such, and also the grid, and also contributing to the easy tags. Jim, in his getting started with Selenium session, talked about using the easy tag. So GitHub has labels. We label most of our issues, and if there's an issue that's actually found to be a defect, we have a label that's applied to that repository or that issue, and typically those are a good place to start with contributing. But
for the Selenium tests that I write these days, I would like a feature in there where there's some algorithms to make sure that when a command is run, that it's not maim or kill any humans that happen to be nearby.
I did remember the other thing. The website could use a redesign as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many people here can code? Okay, how many people here can write in like a proper language, like that humans speak? Yeah, we could really do. How many people? Okay, not all of you can write, but almost all of you can code. It's like Terminator has happened. That's an interesting data point. How many of you have read the docs on the website and gone, crikey, these could do with a refresh? Okay, so the intersection of the set of people who can write in a human language and the people who think the docs need to be improved, those docs are also on Git. You can check out all of the information, every single word on there. And if you send us pull requests, we will improve them and fix them. And right at the very first Selenium conference, Paul, who was helping sort of spearhead the documentation effort, was one of the people up here on the stage. And we'd love to have like a new documentation maintainer.
I actually have a little follow-up feature/trolling situation. Not for Selenium, but for Appium, which is fully open source. I hear there are people extending it for the enterprise, and I would love that to be contributed back to the open source project too. So if you do it, bring it back.
It turns out that the ability to send a string to be evaluated as JavaScript is a really important feature. Does Selenium have a greater role to play with regards to interacting with JavaScript, especially for JavaScript babies like myself?
Does Selenium have more to do with JavaScript? You know, it's really interesting. When I started on the WebDriver APIs, it had execute JavaScript as a method. And I removed it. And for about a year, Jason in particular was going, "You're an idiot, put it back, put it back, put it back." And the reason I took it out is because people used it as like an excuse to not file bugs. They'd find an issue, like they go, "I want to click on this link," and the clicking isn't happening, and so I'll just execute some JavaScript and pretend that link has been clicked. And we got really good bug reports because people were incredibly frustrated with the fact that, you know, it wasn't working. And then we'd fix it, and then it would be fixed for everyone, not just one person working around a problem. Roll forward about a year, and it's like, okay, we're pretty solid with this. We got the model of we're going to try and use the browser in the same way that a user would. And then it was like, and now being able to like lift the covers and peek underneath and see what JavaScript is doing is a really useful thing. JavaScript itself is a really interesting language. Like people appear to be trying to use it everywhere, like in the browser, in the server, on the desktop, on the moon. I don't know. And I think because people see it's like one language, they expect it to, and it's always been run in a browser, right? They expect it to be able to do that. And actually it's not. It's sort of, there's a server-side Java, right? And JavaScript, there's a server-side JavaScript. And that should be unit tested with, you know, Jasmine or, you know, whatever the testing framework du jour happens to be in the JavaScript world. And by the time you get it into a browser, when it's running there, the thing you're interested in an end-to-end test that you're attempting to automate with Selenium, is the effect that JavaScript has, not the fact that there is JavaScript in there. And so that's just a traditional Selenium test. Right? There's nothing particularly radical going on there. Selenium as a runner of JavaScript tests is a crazy idea. So don't do that, because that's crazy. I don't know. Like, I don't know is the actual answer. I think having good JavaScript bindings is going to be useful, particularly as things like React Native and sort of the push of JavaScript into native app development happens. But I don't quite know what that looks like. Does anyone else have an opinion or a thought?
Just a thought that if you are using JavaScript to manipulate an element or to interact with an element in a way that the user should be interacting with it, that's probably not the best approach and not what we want to see happen. We'd rather have you use the interactions APIs, you know, click, send keys, the actions API, than trying to have to work around stuff in JavaScript. You know, I won't come out and say you're doing it wrong, because, you know, there are always exceptions to rules of thumb, but you know, in the main, you want to try to avoid that, specifically for interacting with elements like you would with a keyboard or a mouse or, you know, whatever.
Can I just ask the gentleman who asked the question, are we answering the right question, or have we completely misinterpreted what you said?
No, I think you're on the right track. You know, JavaScript is out there, and we have to deal with it. And trying to get, a good idea of how to do that is a big part of the challenge for me right now. And, I don't want to do it in lieu of a user doing an action. Usually it's something that I'm trying to backdoor for some crazy reason. And, and the evaluate string does the job now in a lot of cases. Just makes me think too hard. So, I'm looking for easier construction of those strings that get evaluated and easier interpretation of the response that comes back. And it's JavaScript debugging in general as a problem in the context of Selenium. So.
Okay, thank you.
I do think there's value in mentioning JavaScript unit testing as another component that you can add to your test coverage. I think in the whole testing pyramid, that's kind of the new kid in the block, and I think it's definitely worth considering in addition to end-to-end testing and functional testing and all that.
Next question, if there is one.
See any more?
There's a gentleman in it.
Hang on.
Hold on a sec.
Do you think Selenium will exist in 10 years? What's your vision?
Yes, hi. There's this great quote from the guy who created Ethernet, and he said, and I think he was asked the same question, will Ethernet survive in 10 years? And he said, yes, because it will get completely replaced by some other complete different implementation, like from hardwires to Wi-Fi, but the Wi-Fi is Ethernet. And he said, what happens is when that new implementation of the communications protocol will come along, they'll just call it Ethernet. So I think in 10 years, Selenium will be around, and whatever it is, we'll just call it Selenium, but it'll probably implement the WebDriver API. That is sure, and we'll just call it Selenium, but it probably won't be any code that exists today in any form. Star driver, right.
Omega driver.
Skynet driver.
Yeah, the last driver, and then we can do like the 2.0 release. Yeah, I mean, this niche of, hey, I need to automate a browser isn't going to go away. As long as browsers exist, a mechanism for automating them needs to exist. And Jason's right, the WebDriver W3C spec, which should be done by, we say it every year, but actually this year, it might actually be true. It should be done by Christmas. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we said it in Boston. Every year, there's two things that we announce. One, Selenium 3, two, the release of the W3C spec, and Marionette. Right, those are the big three. Right, Marionette is the Mozilla thing. So yeah, in 10 years' time, we should have Marionette and Selenium 3 and the W3C spec. The project will probably still exist in some shape or form. Who knows what it'll be doing? Hopefully it'll be doing automating wristwatches or robots or cars or Cylons or, yeah, I mean, the singularity may have happened and it may be testing humans to see whether they still function.
Are there any more questions? I have a...
Right. There's a gentleman over there and...
All right, great. Nope. There's one over here, All right.
And yeah, there was a couple of people over there waiting.
While I'm walking over there, I do want to get a rehearsed no from all of you. So, will Selenium support HTTP status codes in the browser?
No. Almost definitely.
I want to hear everyone say no because every year.
Right after we release Selenium 5.
Hi, I have a question that we have a huge requirement of accessibility testing for a lot of the websites that we work on. So is there any plans for Selenium to make it inbuilt as part of the native code itself? Because currently we're using a lot of third-party tools to do the accessibility testing for the web pages. So, so that was my just curiosity, if that's something which is in the plan.
Anyone? I had a bit.
So it's called accessibility, which makes websites easier for the disabled persons to kind of read through. So they use different tools, JAWS or screen readers.
Accessibility testing.
Correct.
Will Selenium help with accessibility testing?
Yeah. So we are using third-party tools, and we try to integrate the third-party tools with Selenium and then try to make it happen. But it's something which we're doing out of the way to make it work. But so I was just curious if that is something which is on the roadmap.
I don't think we have plans, but we totally should. My brief stint at Google, when I was there, I hung out with TV Raman, who is blind, and did some awesome tools, and he kind of ran the, call them grouplets, little college clubs, whatever, and he ran the accessibility grouplet, and we had this observation that all of the practices, all the tools, everything that we talk about on how to get browsers to do a thing in the testing universe is the exact same thing they talk about in the accessibility world. They just use different words for them and use different tools. And the problem is, like, we would totally be best friends forever if the testing world got in the same room as the accessibility world. We just don't, for whatever reason. The same thing with like industry and academia. For whatever reason, we don't swim in the same circles. We totally should. I think some interesting things would come out of that. We should probably actively invite accessibility people to come to the conference and give talks. Awesome things would probably come out of that, but unfortunately, I don't think there are any plans to do anything about that, and nothing's really happened, which is unfortunate.
So at the last W3C TPAC, which is like where the W3C organization just get together and they spend days in rooms talking with each other, occasionally saying rude things to each other about like their opinion about things. Some of the browser testing working group, which is what the WebDriver spec is being done under, went to go and sit in some of the accessibility talks, and some of the accessibility working groups came and had a chat with us. Like, there's definitely overlap, there's definitely room for people to work together, and we don't quite know what it looks like. I think that may be because we're all relatively healthy and none of us actually have a disability. So we're not, like with web testing, with Jason and myself, and I think most of the people here, our experience came from, hey, look, we need to do these things day in, day out, and gosh, isn't this painful? And none of us have to use a screen reader day in, day out. And so we're not aware of the difficulties of that. And therefore, how we'd like it to feel with the APIs and the interactions we have. Now, you know, this gentleman here, in 10 years' time, that may have changed completely as we become increasingly decrepit and ancient. So I don't know what's going to happen.
It's a call for arms. Come help us out. So maybe it's just a call for arms. If you guys do experience any disability, you don't need to be a developer. You just got to contact one and tell us what you think, what you experience, how it works. We will keep you in mind.
We are a tiny bit over time, so if there are no more questions, we can take one more maybe, but if we don't have any more, I think we should all take advantage of that Uber discount and go have some dinner. One more thing? One more thing.
Just one more thing. This conference has been incredibly difficult to organize. Like, I don't know whether you know that behind the scenes there are people who have worked so hard to make this happen. They've been meeting every week, every 2 weeks over video conferences, and coming here and just making sure that you all had a fantastic time. Santi, do you want to take over here?
Thank you. We all know how hard it is, or we kind of do. At least I do. I married an ex-organizer, and I have dealt with the PTSD trauma for it. So we wanted to actually mention everyone who was involved, and thank you guys. So the workhorse who's been spending the most time, weeks in, weeks out, and months before this conference happened, include Marcus Merrill, Denali, let's give him an applause. Thank you, Marcus. Denali Luma. I think you all know Denali. Anand Bagmar. And as I called you guys, you should come to the stage. So Marcus, get here. Denali, I don't know if she's around. Anand, come over. Anand, if you're around. Leo Lasking, come over. This Dave Hefner guy, I don't know who he is. And Yeah, get to the stage. And Bill McGee. So that's the official workhorse. We actually got a little present for you guys. We did terrible planning, so we ended up doing Amazon Now and ordering a lot of gadgets. So we have headphones, GoPro, Fitbit,
Toys,
stuff, Amazon TV, Fire TV, Kindle. So we're gonna figure out how we give one to each of you guys. Thanks. Yeah, but there's more. There's been extraordinary on-site assistance as well. Andrew Krug, come over. Anthony Brown's. Brownus, sorry, man. Probably mess up half the names already. Ed Manlove. So that's a full crew. On a round of applause for all of them for making this happen.
I think that's the end of all the thank yous. Oh, there's one more. Thank you all so much for being here, coming along. I've enjoyed every single minute of this conference, chatting to all of you, finding out how you're doing things. This conference, this project wouldn't be the same without you. So thank you all very much. I think you deserve a round of applause for yourselves. Dave, you opened this. Do you want to close the conference?
I have no more jokes.
That's a real pity. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, everyone. That's it.